we can help them kind of manifest those dreams in their
Wow.
starting where they spend, 90% of their life. My most exciting part about any project is taking spaces and turning them into places where moments are going to be created,
Oh,
memories are
yeah.
going to be made.
Welcome to the Job Dictionary podcast. Today I will be interviewing Christie Boriack to learn more about what it's like to work as an interior designer. Christie, welcome. Thank you so much for being here today.
Hi, Alexia. Thank you. I'm honored and thrilled to be a part of this conversation.
Of course, we're so excited to have you on. So, three questions that we always like to start off with is in your own words, what do you do? Where do you live? And then as a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh, so fun. Okay. Well, in my own words,
Mm-hmm.
what I do as an interior designer is I help people make their space reflect the best version of themselves, and it enables them to live out their best self in their space. I think that's, in a nutshell, what I would say interior designers do best, and what I take pride in doing. I live in Dallas, Texas. Love it here. It's a huge design hub, and
Yeah.
there's so many good design resources here, so much clientele and interior designers. And then when I was a kid, I had a couple of career pivots as a little girl. It changed on the regular. I would say I think the very first I can remember, my mom was a veterinarian, and so I wanted to be a veterinarian. I grew up a lot around a lot of animals and
Awesome.
loved that. But then once I was old enough to be aware of how much schooling went into that, like you have to
Right.
go to school for a good 8 years, I was like, no, pivot. We gotta, yeah, go back to the whiteboard. When I was little, I loved dancing and singing. So I wanted to
Mhm.
be a performer for a long time. And then at one point, this is so funny to me. I remember really wanting to be a massage therapist at one point.
Wow.
So
Niche.
yes, I know, what a range, right? And none of those really pointed me to interior design, I would say. But what's funny is when I look back, I remember like when I wanted to sing and dance, I remember
Mhm.
setting up my room for like the optimal, stage and, you know,
Yeah.
stage set for optimal performance. Or when I wanted to be a masseuse, I remember dreaming of like what my spa would look like and what my space would be. So it's just funny, like little did I know I had that curiosity and that from a very young age, that interest in
Yeah.
interior design. I didn't know interior design existed or was even a job at the time.
Right. But there were already little seeds of interior design even as you were growing up. That's
Even
so
as I
sweet.
was, yes, yeah, setting the stage in my bedroom, or yeah, drawing up mood boards for my massage therapist studio.
It was there all along.
It was
We
in
just
the
needed
works.
some time. So, how long have you been working in the field of interior design?
Yes, I started at a pretty young age, pre-college. This is my
Okay.
10th year in this industry.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what made you want to go into this career path, and how did you kind of get your start with all of this?
Yes, I actually love the start of this story. I was a senior in high school when I kind of had this realization that interior design is something I wanted to pursue.
Hmm.
I was in an economics class in high school, and we
Okay.
had a project where we had to start a business and create a business plan. And I remember my partner in this project, it was a group project, her mom was an interior designer. And part of my responsibility in this project was actually coming up with like the location and the type of space. And I remember asking my partner's mom advice if she could help me do this, because she was an interior designer. I had never met
Wow.
someone who was an interior designer before. I was really interested in it. This woman, she was so awesome. She went all in with me for this project. She sat down, like helped me create a floor plan, and
So sweet.
me, her daughter, and her specified specific furnishings for this, went above and beyond in this one area of this economics business class. And I just remember her name was Latricia Wilbanks, and I have to shout her out as a huge impactor in my life and a start to this journey
Hmm.
that I've been on, because I then asked her if she needed an assistant or intern. I was so interested in her day-to-day work and what her job looked like. I basically said, I'll work for free. Just
Wow.
teach me your ways. For a
Yeah.
summer, I was her intern. And in return, I would ask for her to teach me how to draft. In her time when she learned how to be an interior designer, when she went to school for it, it was all hand drafting. There was no
Hmm.
software, at the time to do that. So she hand drafted like all of her floor plans and all of her technical drawings, which were so beautiful. So she taught me how to draft. I worked for free for a while, but that relationship, it turned into, I was a senior in high school, and then it turned into a 3-year working relationship. I then
Wow.
started being her design assistant. She started paying me. It was my first job. And I worked for her even when I started college, my first couple of years in Houston, and I loved it. I just thought she was an awesome teacher to me and role model, and I really think that was one of the best experiences of my eye-opening experiences of my life, and helped me find the direction of, yes, I want to do this. I didn't know that people paid people to do this. This is a whole
Definitely.
new world, and I'm gonna learn. So from there, I went to college for interior design, got my bachelor's degree in it, and finished school in Dallas. And I've been here
Hmm.
since working.
Wow. So truly working yourself up the ladder, starting from I don't even know what this is to now you're a full-time interior designer.
Yes, yeah, truly. I mean, that I couldn't have asked for a better start, to be honest.
Hmm.
Shadowing someone was so eye-opening, and being able to run with her was such a blessing, because I got to see from a very firsthand experience the things that she did on a daily and what was required in this job.
Hmm. Right.
Yeah,
So you
thanks.
said that you went to college and you did get your degree in interior design. Would you say that certain certifications or degrees are needed to be successful in a job like this?
They definitely help, and I would say they definitely set you apart. Most entry level job applications will say a bachelor degree in design is
Hmm.
required or very preferable.
Okay.
As far as licensure, actually, interior design licenses differ between states. In Texas, I know that in order to call yourself a registered and licensed interior design, you do have to take the NCIDQ exam. That's what they call it. It
Oh
stands
goodness.
for National Council for Interior Design Qualifying. It's a very hard exam. You
Oh,
have to have both like educational and practical experience in order to even take it. But
okay.
that is for if you want to be licensed and registered as an interior designer in Texas. Um, Now, both of those things I wouldn't say are legally required or a 100% must to practice interior design. There are many interior designers that practice, that even own businesses, that didn't go on to get registered. But,
Hmm.
both of those things can be such an aid depending on how far and how fast you want to go in this industry, but not legally required to practice.
Okay, that's good to know. Are there
Yes.
any other names that this position goes by besides interior designer? Do you ever hear anything where you're like, oh, I guess I'm also that as well?
Yeah. Well, I feel like the most common one, which I'll tell you interior designers don't love, is interior decorator.
There's a
There's
difference.
There's a difference. Yeah, there's a difference. And, there's a different need for both as well.
Hmm.
The two industries or career paths, I think sandwiching interior design is kind of one above, which requires a lot more schooling and a lot more certifications, is interior architect. But
Okay.
then one, I think also the other side of the sandwich is interior decorator, which interior decorator, amazing industry as well, that help in providing decoration or styling with objects and furniture and accessories,
Hmm.
but I wouldn't say they are experts in any sort of remodeling or construction or interior modification that
Okay.
beyond furniture and accessories.
Got it. All right. So
Yeah.
that's good to know for anybody who's kind of wondering, what
Yes.
exactly they want to do and if they should go for decorator, architect, or designer. There's so many different titles to it.
Yes, and there is so many different, that's why I love interior design, or one of the
Hmm.
reasons too is I do both, some of that, both of those things.
Right.
I'm decorating as well to at the, later half of our projects, but I'm also thinking like a architect as best as I can,
Exactly.
to know how spaces, affect and how to space plan efficiently for each one of my clients. It takes that technical side as well.
Definitely. So now tell us a little bit about what a day in the life looks like for you. So in terms of kind of like start time, end time, the percent that you spend by yourself versus working with others, in office, remote, give us all the jazz.
Right. Okay. So typical day. Wow. I don't think there is a typical day. I'm thinking of my own job right now. No day is the same. But again, that's part of it. And that's one of the reasons I
Mhm.
love it. If you like that, that's, for someone who's interested in this career, know that it won't be typical or strict routine on the daily. But that also can be like a real pro and beautiful thing about it as well, and fun. But if I had to generalize it, I would say probably 70% of my job is spent on the computer. I'm spending that time doing a lot of project management work. So to be able to design a project, but then implement the design from beginning to end, there is so much correspondence needed. I'm corresponding with clients, with builders, with trades, with my vendors, everyone and anyone who
Mhm.
touches the project along the way. Just requires a lot of communication and everyone being on the same page and directing that. The other portion of that time is spent doing architectural drawings, for construction drawing sets, for interior drawing sets, and then a big portion as well is sourcing. So sourcing finishes for every project and
Okay.
sourcing what we call FF&E, which is furniture, fixtures, and equipment. So everything going into a space, and just, tracking and finding all those things takes a lot of time and a lot of coordination. So I
Oh,
would
I
say
bet.
that, yes, that is the bulk and probably 70% of what I'm doing on the daily. The other 30% is spent, I think, in person during, presentations, in-person meetings, internal meetings, and then site visits. Site visits happen pretty frequently as you're going through remodeling or construction. As each phase is completed, interior designers, you want to be on site and make sure that everything's done correctly, that the design is intent is being followed through, that your client's vision is going to be solidified at the end. So yeah, I would say that's kind of my time breakup on average,
Right.
but it could
It's a
look
packed
different on
day.
any given day.
Yeah,
Yes,
and they're
yeah,
packed start to finish. You kind of
yes.
mentioned in that question, but what tools or technologies do you feel that you use the most when it comes to your job? I'm sure there's a lot of different tools and, resources like that.
Yes. Okay. Well, the first couple of ones that I use personally at my job on the daily is AutoCAD. It's a software, drawing software that's kind of acts as a nice common language between builders, interior designers, anyone in this industry. AutoCAD is just a really nice, quick way to get something across and communicate. That's
Okay.
the one we probably use most often. Other than that, I love using SketchUp, which is a 3D modeling software. Really helpful in casting a vision in front of your clients and locking that in. And then, other than that, just Microsoft Office Suite for
Yeah.
internal usage or internal processes and systems. That's super used as well. But so those are softwares I would say I most commonly use, and what I hear other designers most commonly use as well. Other than that, a lot of organization and a lot of detail orientation. If
I
you're a
bet.
type of kind of person, then you'll enjoy this work for sure.
Yep, lots of detail in it. That's pretty much what
Yes.
you specialize in. Details
Yes.
and a bunch of
Details,
different things
details.
like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, what parts of your job are the most exciting to you? What parts make you want to get up in the morning and start your day?
Yeah, I love that question because I think in this industry, what I find most exciting part about any project is taking spaces and turning them into places, places where moments are going to be created,
Oh,
memories are
yeah.
going to be made. So creating, visual impactful moments in someone's home, you're setting the stage for that family or for that person to create core memories in. And
Right.
that gets me really excited. That equips them to do so much and do so much within their home and within their life. So, yeah, that gets me really exciting. Also, partnering with the client in the beginning stages and identifying exactly how do you want to feel in your space, how what is the best version of yourself, how do they feel on the daily, what do they
Yeah.
accomplish, what do they do, and then making that a reality, then creating a space that evokes that exact feeling. That is powerful.
I love that. That must be such a special connection between you and your client, just to kind of build what they're
Yes.
going to live in for the rest of their
Yes.
life, you know?
Yeah. I
How
always
sweet.
think we're kind of investigators in the beginning, really
Right.
studying how people live and what their goals are, even what their lifestyle or beyond their lifestyle, what they
Mhm.
wish and hope for in their life. We can help them kind of manifest those dreams in their
Wow.
starting where they spend, 90% of their life.
Right. And then now on the flip side of all of that, what parts of your job are emotionally challenging or physically challenging or even, I don't know if it can be this, but sometimes boring? What parts kind of
Mm.
are on that negative side of it?
Yes, yeah. So in every project, especially when there's construction or remodeling involved, there will always be unforeseen issues that arise. So, mitigating and trying my best to foresee those issues before they blow up is definitely the most challenging. Um, I'll give an example. I have a client right now where we are customizing and making a beautiful, ginormous headboard for their primary bedroom. And this headboard has a lot of trades contributing. There's a lot of people involved in making this and special fabricators, right? So we quoted this headboard. We told them this is what we want it to look, or this is how we want it to look. This is how it's going to be built. And it came in a little over the client's budget. So we had to go back and price engineer and say, okay, well, if we make this a little bit shorter, great, we'll be within budget. The thing with that is, and so much of my challenges arise from this, is you have to think of the ripple effect of that. So if we made this headboard per se a little bit smaller, what does that
Mhm.
impact? Well, it impacted the mattress height we decided to
Okay, I
tell the
see.
clients to get. It impacted the nightstands. Our nightstands were then too big and we had to reselect those. It impacted the bedside sconces that we were going to put on either side and go back and replace those, make sure they were going to fit still. It even impacted the lamp shade we chose to put on the
Wow.
bedside lamps. Right. So you
So
really
much.
don't, so much. It has a ripple effect. You really can't assume that one resolving one issue resolves all the issues. You need to go back
Yep.
and review and make sure what did it impact, because if I had just fixed that headboard and come install day, we put it in the clients, they would have paid a lot of money to have this beautiful headboard, but then everything else looks real jank.
Yeah.
So, the outcome did not meet the expectation. So recognizing that, and that's just one example of things will come up. And I think the challenge is emotionally
Hmm.
when storms like that arise, you have to fight not to think I failed or I'm a bad designer or I'm doing a bad job at this, because inevitably those storms will come.
Right.
But I think I've learned, and I'm still learning, that it's not about avoiding those storms, but it's about how you walk through those. So, am I going to be diligent in finding a solution to this problem? Am I going to be honest or transparent in telling my client about this problem and telling them what happened and how we're going to fix it? And then am I going to treat this issue and the people involved with the grace that
Yeah.
I want to be treated with? So those are the things I think I have to remember emotionally, that that is what's really important, not doing everything perfectly to the T and not having issues, because that's
Yeah.
pretty impossible not to have.
That's so good. Just kind of giving yourself grace. And then I think also keeping that calm within the chaos also ends up producing a better result because you're more
Yes.
level-headed, you're calmer, you know what you're doing, you're not, running around like a chicken without a head. So
Yes.
that's great
Yes.
advice. You said that you kind of have 70% on your software, designing things like that. So do you work in person or do you work from home and remote? Or do you divide the two?
Yeah, I personally currently I work in a hybrid schedule.
Okay.
In the past, in my jobs, I've worked at jobs where it was fully in the office and then some hybrid. With interior design, I personally enjoy a hybrid situation the best. That it
Hmm.
works so well for me. I like it that when I have a lot of work to do where I need to be head down at my computer, I can go home, do that, really focus without any office distractions and get some things done. As an interior designer, though, I can't really say confidently I would be able to go work from another state for a month without there being complications, right? One of the key factors is I want to be available for my clients to come on site for a quick meeting if I need to, or to
Right.
oversee an install, or to answer a question that would be much easier to answer if I was in person seeing it. So, and then of course, there's another factor of our in-person meetings with clients. They're very sensory, right? We've got a lot of samples of stone and fabric and
Yeah.
finishes that we want them to feel and touch. I have a rug sample I'll have my clients stand on, be like, does this feel good on your bare feet? I want them to fall in love with the things that we're gonna move forward with, and I believe that's better done in person. So yeah, it's a little bit of both, but I would say there's definitely a way where you could do both in that industry.
Yeah, of course. I guess also depending on the company. So you work for Fond Interiors, that's kind of
Yes,
how
yeah,
they work. And I'm sure different companies have different, they want either all in person or all hybrid, all remote. So I guess it just depends. With
totally
that, I'm
depends.
sure, yeah, with that, I'm sure there comes, different types of hours. So do you think that you have flexible hours? What does your work schedule kind of look like?
Yes. So for my hours, they're pretty typical right now from, 9 to 5 is when I work. Now, I'll say this, interior design is very scheduled around deadlines. So with that,
Mhm.
I have been in jobs where the leadership really valued that over employees' work-life balance, where I was
Mhm.
expected to work overtime or extend work hours. Um, and I think COVID really helped with that, to be honest.
Mhm.
That forcing everyone to kind of slow down, put things into perspective for people. A couple of years ago, it was around that time, I kind of set the boundary for myself of really, I'm saying I'm not going to work for a leader who doesn't value work life balance. And I'm thankful my current boss does a great job at that. And so I don't feel bad for really having the boundary of, after 5, unless I want to or unless it's an extreme emergency, I'm going to shut my laptop and I'm going to live my life,
Right.
and do the other things that I love, that Christy loves doing. So,
Exactly.
so yeah, I think it really depends on leadership, but that's something important to be observant on when you're applying for
Mhm.
jobs, and to ask maybe other employees that work there, what is your typical hours? You know, do you work overtime? Are you asked to stay late? And not that those things are bad, but it's just something to consider, when you're looking for jobs, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Are there busy seasons in this job? And if so, what parts of the year do you find yourself where it's the busiest season or it's kind of a slower time of year? Does that even exist in an industry like this?
I think it does. For interior design, what I've noticed is people don't really want a big project going on in their house during Christmas or the holidays. So
Very
sometimes it
true.
can be a bit slow between Thanksgiving and New Year's, but people want to get their house in tip-top shape before the holidays
Yeah.
or after the holidays and they've taken all the Christmas down and it's a new year, they want to start a new project. So
Mm,
I found that in the fall, sometimes we'll have an influx of inquiries, and in the spring, I'll have an influx of inquiries. But yeah, I would say the only slow time or time I can expect projects to slow down, if any time of the year, is around Christmas.
around the winter time. That's so
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, I had never thought about it like that. That does make sense. You don't want to have like Christmas dinner and a whole like side of your wall
Yes. If
missing.
you're right, if you're hosting, sometimes it gets very stressful in the fall because so many people will have an expectation of like, hey, I want a new kitchen right in time for my kids
Yep.
to come home and for us to host Christmas. And we have to, softly and gently educate our clients that, hey, this might take a little bit longer than 4 months.
Yeah,
We're
right.
looking at maybe a 8 month to a year project. Let's do what we can now, and after Christmas, let's really go in on this. So that's part of it too. A lot of people will inquire before because they have a party coming up or a life event that they want to showcase their house, and we have to take that into consideration.
Right. What do you find that people typically underestimate about this profession?
Okay, definitely how detail oriented you have to be.
Mm,
um, Focused on the technical side of it more
okay.
than just how it's going to look. So when I'm sourcing items or furniture or fixtures, I'm really thinking about how is this going to fit in the space? How is it going to look with everything else going on in the space? Is it in the client's budget? What does it impact? Who's all going to be necessary for installing this into the space? And coordinating all those factors. So that is something that can be easily overlooked and underestimated for how much time that takes. I think that's something also we have to sometimes educate our clients on,
Yeah,
why it takes maybe a longer time than they expect, because we're really doing this with excellence. We're really researching what is
exactly.
the best material to put on this sofa if you have kids or a dog or you don't want to wash it on the regular, or what is
Yeah,
the best yeah, what is the best layout space for a mom who's a work from home mom with a couple of kids who needs some quiet space but also needs to be present at times. So yeah, there's a lot of factors in research that go into the details, and that is something that people underestimate.
yeah. There's so much thought that goes into it. I mean, kind of like we were saying earlier, you're essentially building a space for them for years and years and years. So there's so much
Yes,
effort and thought that goes behind that, I'm sure.
right. We really don't want to just walk away with something that looks beautiful, but functions beautifully.
Exactly. And what do you feel that people kind of overestimate about this profession? So it could be like a really overhyped idea or something that you hear, you're like, that's not necessarily true. What does that kind of look like?
Yeah, I think of this and I think of what a lot of interior designers show on like social media, right? Is
Okay.
the glamorous portion, is the install day or the shopping. I think people very much put a positive overhyped assumption that we kind of like shop for people and shop for their home and do the what I kind of consider the cherry on top items. So that
Mm,
might be picking, with our swatch paint deck, like going and picking colors or picking pillows out or the fabric that's
got
going to go
it.
on curtains, that kind of stuff, which of course, that stuff is so fun. Don't get me wrong. That is involved in the job and it is a blast. But, those shopping days that I have is maybe 1 or 2 days out of the month
Mhm.
versus the other days are all the coordination, all the detail, the planning,
Yep.
the correspondence that go into that. And so, picking a fabric for those drapes took me an hour and it was really fun. But then going to the workroom and coordinating all the details and the site measurements and the lining and the pleats,
Yep.
like it can be overwhelming and it's all fun, but people just don't know or just don't see that side of it. If as interior designers, if we recorded that process, it'd be really boring social media
Yeah.
content. So we show you guys the fun stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure that kind of like what you were saying, the shopping is like kind of the last thing on your mind. You're not necessarily like doing this for that. So that
Yes,
does make
yeah.
sense on why that's overhyped.
Yes, and I look forward to those days.
Of course.
They're so delightful, and it's definitely a perk in the job is shopping for someone else. But yeah, those days are sometimes far and few between.
I'm sure. What is the fastest way to get into this job, especially if somebody doesn't necessarily have their foot in the door or they're not really exposed to the opportunity that you were meeting somebody so young in your career? What's the fastest way for them to get into this industry?
Yes, I would say, having a design degree really helps.
Mm,
I say that only because a lot of jobs will require or ask for that. Now, I wholeheartedly believe that you can learn from experience and pick up the knowledge and be a great designer without necessarily having to have a degree in it, but it might just take a long time and it might just be a very unique, situation. And to get the opportunity to get that experience where you can learn without having to get a degree. I would say for someone who doesn't want to go to school right now, or it's not in the cards to undergo that journey, AutoCAD is really a great skill and can probably get you in the door um, quickly if you hone that skill. So it can be self-taught. I know that there's online courses for AutoCAD. I believe even Skillshare or YouTube has some videos on how you can be proficient in that. If you learn just that skill alone, some design firms will contract, drawing work out, and you could maybe get in the door that way. Just offer doing some
got it.
drawings or doing your AutoCAD. Extra credit with that would be learning Revit and SketchUp, which are other design applications, softwares that are very commonly used. You know, um, there is also ways to assist in interior design firms without doing design related work right away. So
Mm,
being an office manager or being an admin assistant or procurement assistant, that is huge. Procurement is a large factor in interior design practice that is commonly not thought about. That is like the ordering process and the tracking process of all items going into a project. So sometimes that can take a multiple person team,
yeah.
and you could, if you're organized and maybe even have some financial background, that could be a great starting place, and you could be a great asset to a firm. Other than that, I think one factor that or one principle that I've recognized is so valuable is you have not because you ask not. So
Right.
if you know an interior designer, if you even just via social media, don't be afraid to reach out to them, buy them a cup of coffee, and ask them questions. Ask them if
Yeah.
they need any help. Ask them if they know anyone who needs any help in the industry. I mean, that is so valuable. I think getting in front of someone's face and saying, hey, this is a area that I'm wanting to explore. I'm curious in. Tell me about your experience. What would you advise me to do? That is so, so valuable. And don't be afraid to ask, because really, I think selfishly, people love to help other people. It makes us feel
Yeah,
good.
of course.
So yeah, just remember that that can be something as like so small and easy to do immediately.
Yeah, I mean, you are a perfect testament to that. That's kind of how you got your start, just being eager
Yes,
and wanting to know more and asking, that mentor that you had super early on in your field before you were even committed to it. Just what can I do?
yes.
What can I learn? And look where you are now.
Exactly. I really have yeah, really am grateful for that experience. It was the best start I could ask for.
Of
And that
course.
didn't come with any sort of qualifications. I knew zero. I knew nothing. I was just willing to run errands and assist
Yeah,
anywhere I could.
exactly. What other fields are people coming from before getting into this profession? Do you find it to be a little bit random, or do you kind of pick up a theme whenever it comes to something like that?
Yeah, from what I've observed, it's somewhat random, although I know of a couple designers who are excellent that have engineer and law backgrounds. I think it's because they're
Okay.
so type A and again,
Yeah,
detail oriented, that they're very organized, and that can be like a huge, huge, I mean, that is a huge skill set in any industry, but in this one
of course.
specifically, that can get you ahead. Some other ones I've found are wedding and party planners. I think
Okay, that kind of
because,
makes sense.
yes, like they're also detail oriented, right? But they also have experience working with vendors and communicating with multiple people to get a job done. You know, when they're planning a party or an event, there's so many people that are involved in making that happen and contributors. I think design is the same way. And so if you have that skill set of, learning how to schedule and manage and talk to people, that's a big asset. Another one I've seen is people with fashion backgrounds,
Okay.
just their talent. They already know how to apply design elements like color theory, and they know what looks good, and have kind of
Right.
a natural knack for evoking emotions through design. So that can also be super helpful. Those three backgrounds are what I've personally seen, and I think would be great contributors, as far as skill set for this industry.
Yeah, that does make sense. I'm not gonna lie, the lawyer one kind of did throw me out of the loop. That's super
Yes,
interesting. I
there.
wouldn't have thought that.
No, me neither. I was so surprised, but a lot of time the two that I know, they started practicing law and were like, this kind of sucks. I don't want to do this. But they had a natural knack for being, very organized, management
Yep.
type A, and could get things done orderly. Also, that's super helpful when it comes to interior design contracts and verbiage and negotiation. That's a side of it too, where they were really, really good at that because they studied law or engineering, which is, living for the details. So
Yeah, I'm sure. That does kind of correlate in some way. And even if you
yeah,
don't think so, it is connected.
yes.
What does somebody have to be really good at and like doing to be good at your job or any type of interior design aspect?
Yes. Well, I mean, I've said it a couple of times, being detail oriented, but
Hmm.
I'd also say being a very good listener,
Okay.
listening to your clients and picking up on what their vision is, and observing um, how they live and foreseeing the needs of their
Mm,
space. That's going to be really, really impactful. Um, so being a kind of, again, um, a detective in the beginning of, I'm going to discover and figure out how you live and what could possibly be super impactful in your space if I
yeah.
include it. Other things, well versed in style and trends, of
Hmm.
course, that is helpful, knowing what what things look good together, how to apply design elements. That of course is super helpful. I think as far as being really good in those things, that is probably something a little bit more easy to learn and be a little bit more teachable for someone starting out
Got it.
than characteristics like a very good listener, but then also having a posture of being servant hearted. This
Mm,
is, at the end of the day, interior design is such a luxury service, right? Like it is not everyone's in everyone's cards, or not everyone is able to hire an interior designer. It's a very
right.
luxury service industry, so you want to just have that in mind, have that posture of, hey, people are paying for my time, my
Mm,
expertise, and their expectation is for this to be done perfectly and or done very, very well, and I want to deliver that, not just the
right.
result, but also make the process really enjoyable. The process of working
Yeah.
with me needs to be enjoyable. Our conversation, uh, teaching them the process along the way, letting them in on the process and feeling like they're collaborating. That whole journey, from start to finish, you want that to feel like a luxury experience. And so, um, just having that posture, I would say, is a really, really good thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, I love that. And how long do you think that it takes to become really good at a job like this? Did it take a certain amount of years for you, or was it kind of just gradual, or did you have a moment where you're like, "Oh, I know what I'm doing."
Yeah. Oh my, this is a very hard question to answer because it's so dependent on your environment, how your
Mm,
environment challenges you. It's gonna be the determiner on how fast and how well you grow, of course. Now, that being said, something else to be aware of is that projects that have construction or remodeling involved tend to take a long time, right? You can expect a new home project to take sometimes up to two years.
mm,
So, in order, with that time frame in mind, in order to have a couple of projects under your belt from start to finish, that can take somewhere between 4 to 5 years,
okay.
to really see the process through a couple of times. Now, again, putting yourself in positions that you feel like are maybe a little outside your comfort zone are going to require a lot out of you and challenge you, and make you learn by fire a little bit. That's the best. Your environment 100% shapes you at the end of the day. So I'm hesitant to put, an exact time frame on it because it can be so different per person. But the one thing I can say is try to get a couple of projects under your belt from start to finish, to just have the experience of what every stage of the project is like.
Wow, that's so awesome. And then kind of to keep the ball rolling on timelines, is there
Yeah.
a typical promotion path in an industry like this, from entry to a higher position, or what is the average time kind of spent at the levels? What does that look like
Mhm.
with interior design?
Right, right. Well, I think the design ladder per se, usually, you can start as like an intern or assistant, but if you that's, sometimes people who are still in school, or if you don't have a background in interior design, that could be a very, entry level position, is just interning at first. But then
Okay,
I'd say entry level position, like official position, would be design assistant, where you're assisting the design team, but you're not holding full responsibility for projects yet, of course. And then
got
from
it.
from there would be junior designer, senior designer, and then from senior designer, usually it's project manager.
Okay,
And then from project manager, you can be principal designer, you can be design director. So yeah, that's kind of the stages I would put to it, and most commonly what I observe in my past jobs and other design firms.
got it. Super good to know.
Yeah.
What is the average salary for somebody at your position? Now, this can look different for, a bunch of different designers, but you can provide a range even if it's super broad.
Yes, yeah. So like you said, it's definitely a range. I think it varies per city you're in and what state you're in, and then obviously the scale of the firm you're working for. So I can just share my own experience as a senior designer in Dallas, Texas, where I live. Usually salaries can range from 70K a year to 100K a year, depending on that's a a broad spectrum, right?
But
Because
it's a
that
range, yeah.
definitely depend on the scale of the company, the type of design that company is doing, whether that's residential design, commercial design, healthcare design, hospitality design, all those
Got
kind
it.
of play a factor. And then, of course, kind of like what we said earlier on in the conversation, if you have a design degree and or you're licensed or registered as an interior designer, that can also qualify you for higher paying jobs. So that can play a factor as well.
Got it.
Yeah.
So, whenever people in your field kind of move on, what kind of work do they often go into next, if they go into any further work after, their career as an interior designer? Once again, do you see themes in this, or is it just kind of a little bit random?
I don't really know. I don't haven't seen a ton of people move on from this field completely. The
Right.
theme I think I most commonly see is designers, once they've kind of worked their way up in position, will have the dream and the desire to start their own firm, and then they're entrepreneurs at that
Got it.
point, and they want to
Okay.
do another facet of design, which there's so many of. That's the beauty of it. Like there's room for so many people and everyone in this industry because there's so many facets to design.
Exactly.
If
Yeah.
you liked designing a restaurant in your past experience more than you did residential, then you can go into hospitality design. There's a whole other world for that. There's a whole
Wow.
other world for commercial design or multifamily. So I think I most commonly see designers who have been in the field a long time either switch their facet of design or their specialty, or become owners or and start their own company.
Got it. So, kind of like staying within the industry, but just kind of like moving on to their own separate firm, their own separate thing.
Yes, staying within and then maybe just specializing or yeah, exactly, starting their own.
Yeah, interesting. Are there any books or resources or programs, even certifications that you would recommend to someone kind of wanting to get their start in interior design? Was there any that you were a part of?
Yes. Well, I mean, I've already mentioned bachelor's degree in interior design definitely is helpful, right? That
Right.
is probably the most clear and basic, easiest
Starting point.
starting point, right? Coming out of that. But if that is not in the cards and you don't want to go to school, then I think hardening some skills like AutoCAD, some 3D rendering, getting your skill set solidified in that would be, and then you could have something to really bring to a job interview and say, hey, I can help you with this and be an
Yeah.
asset to a design team. Other than that, I would recommend reading this book called The Interior Design Handbook. I was required to read it in school, and I'm actually reading it again
Oh,
recently.
wow. How
And
cool.
just, yes, I'm in it right now. It's just like the best basic guidelines to interior design. And it talks a lot on how to do it and basic codes, basic space planning, furnishings, thinking on how to design versus what to decorate with or what looks good. I mean, it's just gold. Like it's such a good reference tool and I've relearned so much reading it again. So if you read that book, you'll learn a lot and you'll have a good basic knowledge. Um yeah, that's what I think would be a good starting point.
Yeah. Are there any ones that you have heard of that you do not recommend to people that are kind of wanting to get their start where you're like, stay away from this?
Oh, that's so interesting. I don't think so. I haven't heard of any that are like really bad or lead you, to wrong information
Yeah.
or incorrect, or I would just say, don't learn solely off social media.
That's
That's
such a good
pretty
one.
obvious, that's
Yeah,
pretty obvious enough. I wouldn't say don't take what you see on social media and think that that's all that there is to it, or because
definitely.
that certain person did it that way, that's the official correct way. There's a lot of self-discovery that is required. And so,
Hmm.
yeah, I think that, that's pretty obvious. I don't think anyone would,
Yeah.
would try to school themselves in this industry with social media alone. But I can't really think of any bad or wrong ways. I think if this is something you want to do and you just start with the basic skills, all work works. I mean, it's going to contribute to something, and I don't think you're going to regret it.
Yeah. Well, Christy, you have shared an amazing amount of advice and insight in today's interview. Just to kind of wrap things up, going into our last question, what would you tell your younger self at the beginning of your career? So, whenever you were just starting to get an interest in interior design, looking back to, from where you are now to then, what would you say?
Yes. Oh my goodness. Okay. What I would tell young Christy starting in this career, I would say that good design speaks for itself, that you don't have to convince others that it's valuable and an asset to living your best life. I think I used to maybe be self-conscious that people thought it was a materialistic industry, or that it was, just a way to kind of show your status, when in reality, good design offers and provides so much more than that. Um, so that's what I would say. I would also just tell her, it's just so temporary,
Yeah.
that none of this is eternal, and it's just stuff. So, none of this you can take with you. So really focus on the way that you serve and love others is the thing that's going to make the most impact, and that is eternal. So I would say focus on that, and that can, be true for all industries.
Right. That's so good. I love that. Where can people reach out to you or follow along with you with your work?
Yes, yeah, you can follow my journey on Instagram. I'm also on TikTok, which is super fun.
Love
I've
it.
recently started posting on there this past year, and I love it. It's just such a fun platform. But my
It
handle
really is.
is Home by Christie on both of those platforms, and you can find me there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Christy, for your time today. We loved having you on. You shared so much amazing insight in what it looks like to be an interior designer, and we really appreciate your time.
I'm so glad. This was so much fun.
Yeah, thanks. We'll be seeing you.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
You just got one episode closer to learning about the world of jobs out there. To explore the rest of our career categories and find your best fit, go to jobdictionary.com to sign up for the beta users waitlist. Then subscribe here to find the next episodes coming out this week. And as always, drop us a comment, review, or message to let us know how we can better attune our episodes to your specific needs. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, X, Threads, Pinterest, and wherever else you're on socials to go get our short, snappy preview reels that expose you to new job options every day. Because here at Job Dictionary, we believe your big aha moment can be just one scroll away. Go check it out and get out there. Cheers!